Welcome to the conversation here on the Young Turks. I love doing this, and part of why I love doing this is because of actually, it's the only reason I love doing it. Let's be serious. The interesting people that we get to talk to on the conversation, and we get to do it in a way that isn't just a quick question and out. Today, we are joined by Benjamin Crump. Ben is an attorney, and he is probably a sadly familiar name because when we hear about Ben in the news, he is generally talking about a tragic case of, in most cases, a minority who has been gunned down, just generally speaking, for being a minority. And in most cases, these are young African Americans. He first came to national prominence anyway during the Trayvon Martin case, the murder of Trayvon Martin by George Zimmerman back in 2012. And now here we are still talking about some of the same themes. Want to know what has changed. We want to know how he approaches cases in a different way. And then also an update on some of his past cases, perhaps. Benjamin Crump, welcome to TYT.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me, and thank you for all these many years still fighting to use your platform to give a voice to the voiceless. I always thank Jink and you all with Trayvon because you all started covering it hard before the mainstream media started covering it, and for that I have been eternally grateful to the Young Turks.
You know, I appreciate that, Ben. I appreciate it on Jank's behalf as well. If there's one thing that we are most proud of, it's generally telling those stories, the voice of the voiceless, telling people about what is happening in places that they're not going to be heard. And you know, being that megaphone is a nice thing, even though it often, and especially in cases like the ones that you represent, it often isn't great news that we're talking about. Let's talk about the story of the day. You're representing the father of Ahmaud Arbery. You know, what we're seeing here are patterns that we've seen in the past. To a layperson, what do? They tear down the reputation of the person who is deceased. That was the case with Trayvon Martin. That's the case here today. It was the case in Ferguson, Missouri. What is it that you do to defend against that? This sort of the character assassination after the fact.
I'm representing the family along with Attorney Lee Merritt, so we're making a united front. His mother and father are coming together, standing for justice, even though they are separated. And I just wanted to clarify that because it's important that people know they are together, they are united because they both love their child and cannot believe he was lynched in 2020 and that his killers got to be free for more than 10 weeks. And so, Michael, when we think about these Black Lives Matter cases, because in most of the instances, it is young African Americans or Hispanics that are being killed by police or quasi-police authorities, or these stand your ground type cases with white people who are confronting and trying to impose their will on people of color. And so when you think about the picture, it's always the same. It's these individuals who felt that they were entitled to confront people of color and make them submit to their will, whether it's Trayvon Martin, whether it's Michael Brown, whether it is Ahmaud Arbery. I mean, it's so many of these cases we hear of these vigilantes, even though we can't call them vigilantes, Michael, because the people like Ahmaud and Trayvon committed no crime. They did no wrong. Marquise McGlockton in Pinellas, Florida, you know, the guy said that they parked in an alleged handicapped parking space, and he's going to take the police power and make the black people submit to his will, and he shoots Marquise McGlockton in front of his 3 children, his 5-year-old son, his 3-year-old daughter, and his 1-year-old son. And it's such a tragic, sad case because as he's shot, he stumbles back into the convenience store, and his 5-year-old son is reaching out to his father. His father falls right before his feet. And at that point, that is the last time he's ever saw his father alive on this earth. And what do they do in that case? The same thing they did in Trayvon, same thing they're doing in Ahmaud. They try to say, oh, he had ecstasy in his system, as if that had anything to do with this guy shooting and killing him. Just like with Ahmaud, they come back and dig up and leak a tape from 2017, and they literally try to make him seem like he is not worthy of the consideration that people have been giving him, saying that he was a person who deserved humanity because he dared to confront the police in that video and say that you have no right to harass me and you don't have a right to search my car. I am not going to give up my constitutional rights against an unreasonable search and seizure. So that's what you have. And note in that video, he gives his driver's license. He's very respectable initially, and he's hoping, at least from the video, that I complied everything. Why are you continuing to harass me? They meant it for bad. I was brought up in a religious background, my grandmother and mother. When they meant it for bad, God meant it for good, because what I think that video demonstrates is the everyday struggle that Black people have to deal with in America from being profiled and harassed by law enforcement.
What are the lessons of Trayvon and some of these other cases that make you a better attorney in representing these families now?
Well, certainly, Michael, we don't take anything for granted that the system will work for us people of color, because the one thing we saw in Trayvon was the lack of what we believe was defending Trayvon's life and dignity and his honor, like we so often see when the victims are white. And we have to make sure they see the humanity in our children. We have to make sure that they understand that even if our children aren't perfect, they're our children and they still are American citizens and they still deserve equal justice under the law. So when I think about Trayvon Martin, and we won the civil case and we did everything we were supposed to do, but we have to push the prosecutors. We have to give them resources. We have to tell them how to portray a Black life. We have to tell them that this jury is going to come in this courtroom with a bias against this African American, and you have to speak to that. And we have to re-educate them, because they may have a bias against Black people. They may think that, oh, there must be some justification to justify this unjustifiable killing, because really the Black person couldn't be as wholesome or good as people are making him out to be, or making her out to be. And that is a problem, because oftentimes white people are always given that benefit of the doubt, given the benefit of consideration, given the benefit of possibility when a prosecutor is prosecuting a person for taking their life, especially if it's a person of color. Because as I articulate in my book, Open Season, The Legalized Genocide of Colored People, I talk about the easiest way to get on death row in America is to be a person of color and to kill a white person. And the second quickest way to get on death row in America is to be a person of color and to be accused of killing a white person. And when you juxtapose that, Michael, and it is a white person killing a person of color, there is no guarantee that they'll even go to prison, much less the death penalty. And because of these racist Jim Crow stand your ground laws, there's no guarantee that they would even be arrested. They kill people in our community and go home and sleep in their beds at night.
It's one of the things in preparing for this interview, I wanted to ask you was what is encouraging, and there isn't much when, I'm sure you've read and probably met several times Fred Gray, who is still alive, still in Montgomery, Alabama. He represented Rosa Parks in 1955, now 65 years ago, and represented Dr. King and many others since then. And he talks about just what you said. I mean, it would say, he talks about how you have to go into it knowing that the people who will be judging you do not think the way that a black person thinks in America. And that's the hardest part of it. And then I hear you saying the same thing. And man, it's this much later, this much farther down the road. What's encouraging? What should we be happy about? I was going to say, and I'll let you answer, but I just thought of this, that so many more people can name these victims now. They're not just a black woman in so-and-so got this, a black man in so-and-so got this. These are names that we know now, and we know them well. We can recite them. We hear people saying, say their name, and we say their names. Is that the only thing? There's got to be more that's encouraging, Ben.
Well, there's more that's encouraging, and I just thank you so much, Michael, for mentioning Fred Gray. He's a tremendous man, a mentor and fraternity brother, and just a great overall human being besides being a great civil rights lawyer. And we need to always give him reverence when we get an opportunity. But I was talking to my good friend Teslin Figueroa, and we was talking about what has changed. And I do believe Trayvon, because with your help and so many people, it was the #1 news story in the world in 2012. And it really raised the conscious level that Black Lives Matter in America. And because of that, we are keenly more aware of these tragic killings of Black life, even if a lot of the police officers are escaping accountability. But you do notice that it's changing. And I can only cite the last 3 high-profile cases that I've worked on. Corey Jones, the church drummer that car was broke down on the side of the road in Palm Beach, Florida, at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you literally had an undercover police officer in plain clothes, jeans, t-shirt, baseball cap, and a cargo van come and perpendicular to him like a T-bone in the middle of the night. You can imagine how vulnerable you are at that time. And he literally gets out the car and says, what's going on? Corey, not knowing who this person is because he never identified himself as a police officer who was a registered gun owner, picked up his gun to show him and said, we don't have no problems. And then the police officer, still without identifying himself, said, oh, hell yes, we do, and said some other profane words at Corey. Corey had a gun, never shot his gun once, took off running. The police officer emptied his gun, hitting Corey 2 times, killing him, and then called 911, lied about it, shot the gun some more times, and but for the tow truck company recording the call because Corey was on the phone, he would have gotten away with murder. Well, in that case, literally, an all-white jury in Palm Beach County found that police officer guilty, and he was sentenced to 25 years. The first time a police officer had been guilty for killing a Black person in the state of Florida in 35 years. So that was hope. And then Botham Jean, obviously, when the white policewoman went into the apartment and the wrong apartment and killed Botham Jean, Amber Geiger tried to say self-defense. And, the judge kind of allowed, literally, her to make that argument of self-defense, the castle doctrine, which is a version of self-defense. And the problem, Michael, was it wasn't her castle. It was Botham Jean's castle. But thank God the jury didn't buy it. And so she was convicted and sentenced, and the punishment didn't fit the crime. She only got 10 years, but they did convict her. And then in the aforementioned Marquise McGlockton's case in Pinellas County, Florida, that's the St. Petersburg, Florida area, it was an all-white jury there who sentenced that vigilante for killing Marquise McGlockton in front of his children, did not buy his stand your ground argument, and he got sentenced to 20 years. So there's some hope, you know, but it's waning, because then you think of Alton Sterling, you think of Orlando Castile, you think of Eric Gardner, you think of Terrence Crutcher, you think of 12-year-old Tamir Rice, you think of Sandra Bland, you think of Pamela Turner, and now we're talking about Ahmaud, but also there's Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky, and I always want to say her name because I'm not certain that Black women get the same kind of attention that Black men get when they're killed by the police. And so I keep telling everybody who will listen, if you ran for Ahmaud, you got to stand with Bree, because Breonna Taylor was executed in her own apartment in the sanctity of her home by 3 Louisville Metropolitan Police officers doing a botched, I believe, dangerous, unconstitutional, no-knock warrant execution. And so let's keep saying her name and keep saying Pamela Turner's name.
Right, and what, you know, an interesting part of that case is this whole idea of stand your ground. They use it when it's convenient, but if someone else is standing their ground, as they were in their home, oh my God, you can't say stand your ground, can you, Ben?
You cannot, and I will tell you, Mike, if I can, and I'll try to do it in 2 minutes, but it's such a astonishing fact. The fact, when you look at Ahmaud Arbery and you look at Breonna Taylor, these 2 very high-profile cases that happened within 10 days of one another, and you get to...
Just to interrupt, that was this March. That was in March of 2020 that both of these happened.
Yeah, well,
right,
February 23rd.
Yeah, and then,
March
yeah, that's true. Right.
Yeah. During the coronavirus.
Right, during the corona, but not in the same month, but they were 10 days apart in the, in the,
yes,
one was in March.
Yep. And Michael, what is astonishing about it, and I have a unique perspective because I am an attorney on Ahmaud Arbery's case and an attorney on Breonna Taylor's case, is the fact that when you think about Ahmaud Arbery's killers executed him in broad daylight for jogging. I mean, it's on video. And the police get on the scene. They have all of that evidence. They have the video. They have Ahmaud laying dead on the ground. He has no burglar's mask, no burglar's tools, no burglar's bag. But yet they say, oh, he was committing a crime and we were trying to capture him and it was self-defense. And the police don't arrest them. Let them go home and sleep in their beds at night peacefully for 10 weeks. And then you juxtapose that with Breonna Taylor. She is in her bed, sleeping after working a shift, a full shift. She's with her boyfriend, Kenny Walker, and they are asleep. And the police execute this no-knock warrant, even though they got the main subject of the search warrant in their custody. And both Kenny and Breonna have never been arrested in their lives, have never committed a crime or anything, but yet they're executing this warrant, and they use a battering ram to bust open her front door. Kenny and Breonna called 911 thinking that their home is being burglarized. They think it's a home invasion, Michael. And so Kenny, who is a registered gun owner, I mean, no criminal history, he's trying to protect his castle. He's trying to protect his woman. He's trying to protect their lives. And so he has this gun and he creeps down the hall. He sees the first guy come through the front door. He's not in police clothes. They undercover. They haven't identified themselves. And he shoots one single shot. And then the police just unloads. They shoot bullets from everywhere. They shoot from the window. They shoot from the patio. They shoot over 25, 30 bullets. And quite literally, bullets go into a 5-year-old neighbor's hot room where the little girl's sleeping. And they just reckless, blindly shooting in his house. Breonna's body is mutilated with 8 bullets while she's in her underwear. They confront Kenny Taylor, and he says, we thought you all were burglars. We thought you were intruders. It was self-defense. They arrest him. They take him to jail. They charge him with attempted murder, and he's now facing life in prison. I have never seen such a stark, vivid distinction of self-defense in black and white in America as these 2 cases.
It's amazing, right? Standing their ground. We have very little time. I want to give you like a little rapid fire round here. So I'm going to ask you for quick answers on these because I want to know, people are asking me to ask this. So Trayvon's family, how are they doing now? Do you stay in touch?
I do. I just talked to Sabrina and Tracy today. Obviously, this frivolous lawsuit, we believe, they are having to deal with that. So keep them in prayer. They're such good people.
Yeah. Okay. I want also to talk about just a quick question. You are always identified with these cases. I'm going to ask you not to be self-critical, but if nobody knows you and they see every time a black youth of note and in a case of note comes up as murdered or killed, tell me, then they see Ben Crump right there. How does that happen? And is that good for this type of case in general?
Well, Thurgood Marshall was my personal hero. So more lawyers need to get in this case. More lawyers need to represent them. Most of them just won't because they say there's no money in it. People are going to criticize you. And at the end of the day, that the system is probably not going to give justice to these poor, marginalized people of color. But I believe it's better to strike a match than to curse the darkness. And I look at my daughter's eyes. She's 7 years old, and I understand what we're fighting for. So we have to just keep going forward, knowing that we're on the right side of history.
Ben Crump, thank you for being on the conversation. Thanks for being on TYT. You're always welcome.
Thank you, brother.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.